not stopping 5 minutes after a miracle.
Yeah, don't quit 5 minutes after the miracle happens.
Yeah. So do you want to get right into that? Do you want to introduce yourself, or it's whatever you feel comfortable with?
Yeah, yeah, sure, absolutely. My name is Aman Singh. Born in India. Moved up here in my my early teens and to America, North America. Um, and yeah, I guess I've been trying, feel like I've been maladjusted to life in general for a while. Uh, and tried to adjust myself. Even when my to-be father-in-law asked me, I mean, what would be one word that would describe you? I would say a guy who adjusts.
Mm.
So
How
yeah,
old were you when you moved to the States or to the West?
about 12. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And then you went, what grade is that? Like middle school,
That's yeah, that's seventh grade, junior high.
junior high? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you this, but I was born in North Carolina, but then we lived in the Middle East for a couple of years, and then we moved when I was like 9, so a little
Gotcha.
bit younger. Yeah. Was it a difficult adjustment for? Well, so you said that's your thing is adjusting. So I guess it wasn't too challenging.
I guess when I was even in India, right, I just felt like, you know, um, being in my own skin was not comfortable for me. So forget about the outsides, right? So it's
Mm,
all about the inside. Um, and just to be able to accept who I was or who I am, and you know, it's a lot of confusion, I guess, right? What was happening around me, what was happening inside of me, and not too much communicative, so I can ask the right questions,
hmm.
and maybe I could receive some answers, or maybe somebody tried to um, get that over to me. Hey, you're born with this equipment of a body, a mind, and emotions, and this is what we do with them. This is how we, I guess there's no instruction manual per se.
Hmm. Right.
And I didn't even know there was, something. I guess you can say living life by accident, like being in a
Mm,
demolition derby, right? So from
hmm.
one end to the other, just getting hit from all directions and not making of it, and it's just continuous and nonstop.
So you fell out of your out of place even back in India before you moved here.
Yeah, but everybody looked like me, spoke the same language, and did the
Yeah.
same thing, and but I wasn't feeling like a victim either, right? I wasn't the outsider looking in. I was maybe the insider looking out, or even looking within.
Hmm.
Just just bunch of randomness, I guess, right? There's no meaning for anything, right? Um, um, but there was a lot of love and care, I think, that that I guess I was very sheltered or protected and loved and cared for. And and I knew that was okay. And I felt, that was pretty safe. It wasn't that even I felt unsafe. I just didn't know what to do with it. Or how
What?
to process that even, or not know how to receive even, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, just being a human being. That's something, regardless of moving or when you're moving or major life changes, just figuring out how to do this life thing is a takes a it's a process. I mean, we're still figuring it out, but
Yeah.
where did you do middle school? What city?
That was in Spring Valley, Pomona, New York,
Is that
junior
upstate?
high. Yeah, it's up. You could say, yeah, Rochester, Rockland County. Yeah,
Okay, wait, gotcha. And then uh and then I know you moved to Canada for a little bit later
yeah.
after
Then
high school.
yeah. So then we moved to Queens, New York. That's where I did high school.
Oh, you did high school in Queens.
Yeah, yeah.
What
So
was
it was
that like?
that was different because now
What is it like to be in Queens for high school? I mean, that just high school anywhere is a challenging, interesting time. It's not the real world, right? People make a big deal out of high school, but it's like this bubble, right? But then you're in Queens, like a major, major, major city, extremely diverse. I think Queens is probably something. There was some statistic about it being like having the most a lot of diversity, pretty much. I can't think of another more diverse city in the whole country, honestly.
Yeah, it's pretty diverse. New York. So Queens is a borough, and it's one of the five boroughs of New York.
Hmm.
And when we say New York City, it comprises of Queens, part of the New York City.
Hmm.
And then if you're from Manhattan, the island Manhattan, you say, hey, that's from, you know, that you live in Manhattan. So we're in Queens, still New York City. Of course, you got the Shea Stadium there, the Mets, and you got the two airports that are in Queens, LaGuardia and JFK, and I lived right in Richmond Hill, which is like Desi town, all Indians, West Indians and Indians and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, and everybody's there. Um, so even though there's a lot of members of the community that were there, but going to high school in ninth grade, you know, going to school and getting robbed pretty much on the first day, mugged, right?
Really?
Wasn't fun. Yeah.
You got
Uh,
mugged your first day of high school?
oh, dude, yeah.
Is that on
Uh,
campus or just in the city?
just walking to school,
Wow. How did,
right?
what was it like? Like a did they have a gun? Was it a weapon? Was it just like did
No,
you get jumped?
yeah, get jumped pretty much. A kick to the rib cage, a punch
Wow.
to the eye, and welcome to Queens. Uh, uh,
Wow.
so
Punch in the
from that day,
face, first day of high school.
yeah, um,
How long were you guys living in Queens before you started high school?
probably the summer, right?
Okay, so right, so you were
There,
fresh. You were
yeah,
brand new to
I
Queens.
knew nobody, just first time around, and I didn't even know how walking around would work. I figure everything seems like a coordinate system. So if you make
Yeah,
four right, you'd come back to where you started off. So, you know,
yeah.
it's like
The
getting familiar with it that way.
the city that you guys moved from, and the upstate New York, small town, I'm assuming, or smaller,
Yeah,
obviously, than Queens.
smaller. Yeah,
But in India, what was the city like there? Was it pretty big? Was it a
yeah. It was pretty packed. Where
okay?
everybody knew each other. Yeah,
Okay, so did Queens seem somewhat familiar in that regard of just being like a lot of stuff happening in a small place?
yeah. A lot of very busy all the time. I mean, when we moved into the home, there was a bullet hole in the window. Um, it could have been a smaller gun like a BB gun or something, but it was a clear circle that
Yeah.
and there was a crack, and we were wondering, why is this place available.
Mm.
um and it was in good strides. I didn't make much of it because you get into little fist fights here and there everywhere. So I didn't make much of it. So from
Yeah.
that perspective, you know, um, I guess you can say from early on you learn to take care of yourself, and so you don't want to ask for help or anything like that. Nothing to report to anybody, right? So no communication, which is important, right? To notice. Um, so
When you
nobody knew
say
about it.
you didn't come home and tell people about it,
Nope,
and
no.
because of what, like just not feeling comfortable sharing, not wanting to be exposed or vulnerable or look weak or embarrassed, or was it like the home environment is, like sometimes Desi families are just not, you just kind of have to be tough.
Um, I think they see families, their parents come in, right? So the first generation immigrants, I guess I could be too, depending on how you look at it. Um, and they're just working. They're just working 9 to 9, pretty much,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And by the time you come home, you just want to everybody sit at the table, pitch in, do dinner, and go to bed, and in the morning you get up and everybody does their thing. On the weekends, my dad took maybe one day off the whole year, and it was because it was Christmas, right?
Wow.
There's no work,
So he was
so hard. Yeah,
he was yeah, that's a lot of um you know the immigrant work ethic, our
yeah,
parents have this insane, they came here to work for the
yeah,
opportunity, and so that's just what they did. So you said 9 to 9, that kind of stood out to me. 9 in the morning to 9 at night.
yeah.
So I'm assuming you were so you would come home, probably they weren't there yet.
Correct. Yeah. So a lot of times I think, you get lonely, right? As a kid and you come home,
Yeah.
there's nobody home, nobody to talk to. So you don't pick up those communication skills,
Yeah.
at all. Um, and it's not that it anybody's fault or anything. That's just how it went,
Yeah. Right, right. It's if there's, when the family's working, when people are busy working, there's not a whole lot of time and space to process the day, right? That's a luxury to have.
Oh
And
yeah.
so you mentioned that would so you weren't learning a whole lot of communication skills, which is, I think a lot of people can relate to that. But I bet that there was a lot of that builds, people talk about New York, it's a tough place. It builds resiliency, it builds a type of strength. Um,
Right. You become self-reliant,
yeah.
from there. I'm like, okay, I'm here to fend for myself. And, what can I do? I figure out different ways to get into school, not from the front. You take different paths. Um, you know, put your money in the sock and have 1 quarter in your hand to give and saying, hey, yeah, you got me. And there it is. Right.
Hmm.
So yeah, and then you start to, I guess, hang around with people. You learn pretty quickly. Oh, am I going to be alone, or am I going to need to be part of a group?
Yeah.
Right? You figure out different timings, and different people, makes you a little bit outgoing, I guess. But the motives, what are the motives behind that, right? Am I there so that I can do what everybody else is doing? And you know I knew this was just a temporary thing. For whatever reason, I just knew that this wasn't it, because how I learned to process things on my own without anybody's feedback was, it wasn't survival mode. It was more of, this thing is going to pass, and then the next thing will be there. So I guess I never got to be in the moment. It was always like, oh, I wonder what's in store for me today. So every day was like a full of wonder, right? I wonder what's going to happen today.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and that's where I guess the adjustments start to come in. Is first you're kind of more reactive to life, then you become a little proactive to life, and then you just kind of say like, I wonder what it's going to be like today. So, it's just, do two flips of the coins each day. Each one is going to be independent of the other. So I think from that perspective,
Is
it,
is
it was
it
pretty cool.
learning at an early age? It sounds like that life that you're not really in control of a whole lot. And so if you have these expectations, you might run into some issues. So taking one day at a time, being flexible, that's what I'm getting.
Yeah, yeah, it was very flexible, very open-minded. Um, and I think that's where the resiliency came, being open to that. This is not what's going to be every day. Like, so, come into gym and sit there, and everybody had their clicks together, and everybody would just, they said, okay, go ahead, you guys, attendance taken, you're in gym, you're sitting in the bleachers, and a few basketballs are thrown around, and everybody starts flying. And I'm still sitting at the bleachers, and I see like four other
Mm-hmm.
kids around me also sitting in the bleachers, and we become friends, right? We are the
Mm-hmm.
bleacher friends. I just
The
knew. I'm
bleacher
like,
gang.
the bleacher gang, and we're like, oh, okay. You know what? I don't have to go figure things out for me, or exert myself, or try to become part of something. And I just knew that whatever was meant for me would come to me, or I would be placed in that position. So I became pretty accepting, and I started to embrace what was already, there, provided, and how I was cared for. And I'm like, these are my true friends,
Mm,
because I didn't have to impress anybody. They were there, and we just kind of understood each other. So I was pretty content from that perspective, um, because I just felt everything else was automatically being filtered out of my life that I didn't need, because there was no attraction there, right, from anybody's perspective. And it wasn't there that somebody's there because they need something or want something from me. So it was pure, genuine relationships. So I got exposed to that pretty quickly, and I started to, be at peace, but still living every day as if there's no plan, to anything. Um, so I wouldn't say carefree at that time, but a little bit careless, because I wasn't planning for anything, or I wasn't hoping for
mm.
anything, or expecting anything, or setting up my future, or coming up with goals, right? Um, I wasn't hopeless. I wasn't hopeful either, but in wonder, more accepting, right? So borderline existing and not living.
Just kind of going where the wind takes you.
Yeah, yeah.
No. Tell
Well, I
me,
wasn't going. It was just,
happening.
yeah, it was happening. A going still means that I'm, active in it.
Yeah,
So, like you say, where the wind takes you, you just kind of be like, okay, I'm not
yeah,
for it nor against it.
gotcha. I'm getting some this timer thing on my this Zoom recording, but it's like I don't know, and it's asked me to upgrade. So I guess there's a time limit on my recording, but I'm wondering if we once it gets to this, it's like 8 minutes. If I were to stop it and do it again, it would be another one. So
You get
maybe,
another 40 minutes. Yeah. I think that's what happens with the free account.
okay, yeah, this is a free one. Okay.
Yeah. I can send you a link. I have a paid account, and that's unlimited if you want.
Oh, really? Okay. Um, Tell me about I don't even know where to begin as far as your relationship with your spiritual side. Um, I mean, all of this is pertaining to it, though, right? This is like your story, the obstacles being faced. Some of them, right? We're just kind of scratching the surface, but how? Tell me about your journey with spirituality. I mean, you brought up, the idea of not quitting 5 minutes after a miracle. How did you go from being, you know, uh, carefree, careless, kind of living just in the moment, um, to being where you're at right now, which just seems very like mindful, very connected, very you goal oriented, but not overly so, like still very present. You found like a nice balance, it seems like, and yeah. So if you could just
Right. Yeah, good question. So, uh, probably evident. I'm born into the Sikh faith, and, born in India, where there's a lot of religion, a lot of spirituality. Um, and, there's Sikhs, there's Hindus, there's Muslims, there's Jains and Buddhists, and the various different sects from each religion, and a lot of spirituality, a lot of meditation, a lot of prayer. It's embedded into the culture, right? So, um, I guess you just basically, by osmosis, y- I won't say you get indoctrinated into it. It just becomes like breathing, right? You
mm-hmm.
don't think anything of it. Um, so a base of some sort is there. But when I came to Queens, I was a teenager, around 16 years old, right? In 10th grade or so. Um, so there's a temple there, there's a gurdwara there, that we would go every single day and do seva, which is service. And we would do service, and over time, I, saw the same people who were going to school, they were visiting there. And so all the guys and the girls, we would actually congregate at that on that street where the temple was. or still is today. And that's how I became, made many friends. And we would then all do kind of service there, and which was to distribute langar, which is, open kitchen, and work in the open kitchen and provide
Mm-hmm.
food.
Mm-hmm.
And we would end up eating last when the rotis, or the bread is all dried up and everything, and you've just got leftovers, and it would taste so good, and we would all kind of, that mutual love of service,
Mm-hmm.
and just hanging out in there, that became like a hangout place for the teenagers, the youth. We had a basketball court around there too, and that's the street we would always go out of our way to meet there and congregate together as a group. And then all the Desi people, Indian, Pakistani,
Mm-hmm.
Bangladeshi, everybody,
Mm-hmm.
even West Indian, we'd all kind of get together there, and we would just kind of walk to school from there. And on the way back, we'll take a similar route, and everybody would just kind of fan off. So we found that there was strength in numbers, and
Mm-hmm.
that strength, what I found was based off of that, from that particular street where the temple is, and that's where we congregate together there. So in the summer, they had a class there. It was about reading the holy book, Sri Guru Granth Sahib, and the meanings of it. And I guess the guy who was there from abroad, and the way he took, um, you know, it was mostly youth in that class. It was there for the summer, and it provided me with a perspective that helped me get in touch with my identity. So notice,
Mm-hmm.
up to this point, I know I belong to a certain faith. I hadn't created an identity for myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the identity that I received there was that I was a cosmic being, right? That I was loved. I was a product of love. Um, and the idea of pantheism
Mm-hmm.
kind of got introduced to me, of what Sikhism is all about, which has two major tenets, um, which is that God is, in us, within us, and around us, and also He's separate from us too, right? So the everywhere part of it, um, and also that the he promotes that the promotion of worship that admits and tolerates all gods and all religions,
Mm-hmm.
um, and to be able to say that there's no us versus them mentality.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of pointed out that, look at the our holy group. It's got scriptures written from people from all faiths, and that's the idea. Look, here's a Hindu, scripture. Here's a Muslim scripture, of somebody of that faith. There, and then
Mm-hmm.
the idea that was there. So that made me feel, part of everything. That I'm not separated from anything. And then our greeting was explained to me, Sat Sri Akal, which meant Sat is true, Sri is respect, and
Wait,
Akal is time.
can you say that again? What's the greeting and what does it mean?
Sure, it says Sat Sri Akal, right?
Sat Sri Akal.
Yeah. So Sat means truth. Sri
Truth.
is yeah, respected, right? And Akal is time. Akal is timeless, right? So that means when we see each other, we greet each other with folded hands. We are respecting the truth, that is the timeless truth that is in the other person.
Wow.
Um, and then I realized I'm no different than the other person, right? There's the timeless, the truth, that love is inside of me, and that is also in the other. So when we connect, here we are taught, I guess, in the Western world, to shake hands and look firmly in the eye. And here's a bow with humility and looking deep inside the other person's eyes, and connecting with a smile inside of them, connecting with something that's past, temporary, but that is timeless. What is timeless in the other side? Not their status, right? Not, what they're wearing, but what is permanent in them. So that became embedded, that we are all cosmic beings, and attached to the permanent, the message was, rather than to the temporary. So that became my foundation, I guess, in a way, of having a self identity. So
Okay. So wait. Um, uh, as you were saying that, I'm thinking about teenage development, or just development in general at the teenage age. The important things that teenagers care about are um, their peer group, right? Their social group. So you mentioned like meeting this group of students that you would just bond with, and then also identity, um, which
Yeah,
is yeah. So then you're talking about the greeting and how it differentiates from like in the West. Actually, you mentioned like handshakes. We do handshakes. That's if people also do power handshakes, or it's a becomes a dominance thing, right? You want to have a firm handshake. This is what we're taught. This is
yeah,
what I was taught this in one of my a long time ago. Look somebody in the eye, have a very firm handshake. Don't make don't, it's got to be firm because that implies that you're a strong person, not to be,
yeah.
um, but you're the way you described it, um, timeless. Uh, there was three words:
The truth,
truth.
the respect, and timeless.
Yeah, I love that. And you're talking about the recognition of the thing that is within all humans that is timeless, and how
Correct.
that's like way more deep than just a traditional handshake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's a connection, there's a bond, right? That happens
yeah.
at that moment. And the other one was the identity. I think those started to kind of organically grow. And I guess for me, that was the miracle, right? When that happened.
So you were really starting to understand, and even in the greeting, it's such a simple small thing, but you can expand a whole view
Yeah.
of life from it, right? Of mutual respect and um equality, right? Equality because of what is, I'm assuming my
Right.
takeaway is, correct me if I'm wrong, but like it's referring to something about consciousness, that we all, the most pure thing. I mean, is that kind of what that is alluding to? Just the
Correct. So
consciousness within
what
us.
what do we identify ourselves at? So what happens is when we identify ourselves with something,
Hmm.
we start to our emotions, our attitudes, our perception, our thoughts start to serve that identity,
Ego.
whatever that identity is, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So the ego, yes, you could say the ego would be alone, but in equality, there's, the ego just kind of flattens out a little bit,
Hmm.
right? It becomes um, it
There's
becomes
less of a,
something bigger. It becomes
yeah,
something that encompasses and consumes the ego, but it still
yeah,
might be there, but it's something bigger than the ego,
yeah.
right? Um, it, it's uh, it's a we thing. Now you're not alone anymore, right? Um, and that we are placed in a position, I guess, consciously, where our thoughts start to serve that, right? So, if I'm see you and I meet you and I greet you that way, or we greet each other that way, now my thoughts towards you are going to be on that plane of existence, on that spiritual plane.
Mm.
So, right. So if we are meeting and our motives are of dominance,
Hmm.
then my thoughts, my emotions are going to serve the identity I've chosen for our relationship with you,
Hmm.
right? So that was, the miracle for me. And you know, that miracle, I quit after that miracle when that miracle happened. Pretty
What was the
pretty
miracle
fast.
exactly?
The miracle, the realization, the aha moment, right?
Of what
That
specifically?
I'm not alone,
I
right?
see. Okay, yeah. You
Right. That
know,
that now there's a purpose now. That I'm part of something, the sense of belonging, right?
mm,
Um, the randomness doesn't happen. There's a method to the madness that is around. Everything
Um,
just kind of starts to make sense around you.
so the realization that you are part of something bigger than yourself and that you're not just some random individual isolated thing just floating around.
Right.
You're actually a
Where the
part
wind
of,
will come and pick me up.
yeah.
There's a plan, where the wind will take you, and there will become a
Uh,
purpose. The wind has a purpose now, why it's blowing, and where it's carrying you, and where you'll be placed, that you'll have a role to play there.
that
Just like
your
pollen
life
gets,
is intentional.
yeah, just like the cross pollination, right? It
Yeah.
starts to happen around this time. People get allergies and whatnot, but we need that. Our ecosystem need that we live in,
Yeah.
right? If it doesn't happen, right? Um, Even though it could be uncomfortable for some of us, um, but it's necessary. So I started to see that there was a purpose for me, that there was something underlying. So adjustment
So
started to become easier.
your identity was solidified or becoming solidified via the aha moment that you are not just this individual thing, but you are part of something bigger, and that your life is not random, but that it is part of a larger force, I guess. The
Yeah,
same way that the pollen or just what's happening in nature. Is that right?
but also implying that there's choice in there too.
Okay, right. Okay. There's free will.
There's free will. Yes.
That's always the big thing is like, is there free will and, or is everything destined to be?
So in a way, what was revealed to me, that was my big question for a very long time.
Mhm.
What does karma have to? If karma it's about, everything is about karma, right?
Consequences,
Yeah. If I
cause and
act,
effect, cause and
if I
effect.
act right, if I do something bad, bad will happen. If I do something good, good will happen, right? But if it
Yeah.
was all about karma, what about forgiveness, right? If it was all up to me, you know, then there would be no place for forgiveness, right? It would be all repentance. It would be all owning up, and it would be all, retribution, right?
Hmm.
An eye for an eye, even a tooth for a tooth,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of revealed to me in a way that there's much more to that, right?
Hmm.
Than just, you know, there are many things, there's pardon as well, like a court system, right? You could do
Hmm.
something bad, and you can still receive a pardon. You can still receive another chance, right? You can
Yeah.
get a letter of recommendation, let's say, from somebody, and where people would vouch for you and come and stand for you, right? And then the jury sees that, and you could still be forgiven, right?
Hmm.
Um, or you could be misunderstood if I try to prove myself too much. So this internal world and how people feel and behave and react, um, you know, was kind of instantly like the aha moment. Ah, wow, what is inside of me is also inside of everybody else.
Hmm.
If I pick up the mentality of a victim, my thoughts and my feelings are going to serve that, right? If I
Hmm.
pick up the mentality of a foreigner, then I'm going to feel that way for a very long time, right? Um, so I realized at that point that I'm Sikh. I'm wearing a turban, and I look a certain way. And what's the purpose of that? And that was that I'm there in case that somebody needs any assistance. So I found, hey, that's what people with uniform do, right? And I'm wearing a little crown on my head, and when I wake up, and you start to take those feelings in, that there's, that I'm not a slave to any desires. King is called a Raja, right?
Hmm.
Um, in our native language, and a Raja is somebody who's Raja, which means who is contented. He doesn't, and he may want to expand, but he's already content with pretty much what he has or she has. So, I was content, remember when I was growing up, but it was still incomplete. Um, so this kind of completed me in a way. But because it completed me, I thought that was it. That was done. I've
Hmm.
learned everything and I've moved on. Little did I know this was just a cornerstone for everything else to come,
Mm.
right? Because now how do I take that and now how do I live in everyday life? So I thought, oh, whatever I need to accomplish, this is great. I had this wonderful realization, but I just kind of took it from granted and I didn't do anything with it, right?
Hmm.
So I had this great knowledge and I had access to this great power, but I just didn't do anything with it. I just kind of let it, wither away on its own because I didn't choose to participate with it after.
What would it look? What would it have looked like to have participated in it?
To be able to help somebody, right, along the way,
I
right? For
see.
example, that service was
The
only
service
limited to the
part.
temple. It was limited to temple,
Gotcha.
but it didn't become, um, it didn't materialize, I guess, right, in the daily workings and the daily doings. But it was always limited to very compartmentalized. That here I'm doing it here. Sure, I'm gonna go show up for the New York City plant sale. I'm gonna show up at do some philanthropy work. But it was there so I could put it on a resume, right? It wasn't there because that's how I felt. Even though I did feel that way,
The
I didn't take any action. You know what I
well,
mean?
that realization that you can actually, it was pretty astonishing that you were that young to come to such a profound realization. And that aha moment is goes against the grain of everything that we're told and taught to do in the West, right? Which is all about serving yourself and pursuing success for yourself and your family, and but like for you, right? And that realization is, if it came into, if you were to have built on it, or turn it into action, it would have been to focus on other people in service of the world, of the people in the world, and just everything.
Yeah,
Going
yeah.
outside of yourself, thinking, yeah, being
It-
selfless.
yeah, it was limited to, let's say, family things. It was limited to when I'm at the temple, but it wasn't there voluntarily.
Gotcha.
If I see somebody drop something, I wouldn't help them pick it up, let's just say, right? I'd just kind of go around about my way, you know. Um,
But being in New York, right, and the things that you, like you mentioned, getting mugged, for example, and that's, I can't imagine what other things you saw, as far as, like, you mentioned, I got to fend for myself. So, and that's still a part of the world that you're in. If you can't be naive, and because there are people that would take advantage of that.
yeah, so there's a fear aspect for it, right? That New York, you just kind of mind your business, you have your tunnel vision, and people kind of go about doing things. But in the same place, it's like returning. Then the miracle happened over the years, right? You have the second wave of miracle that start to happen again. And this time I chose not to quit, right? So that was probably in around 2013. I was 35 years old. So in the process, I got married, children, got a great job, a house, cars in the garage, that type of a deal, right? And then you just kind of like, hey, I've checked off everything. I've gotten everything. If you were to ask me what ideal life you would live and what you would get out of it, it's all there. But then that peace isn't there. The contentment isn't there that was there before, right? And why is there's no peace? Why is there no respect? Why is there no recognition of the timeless in other people? Why is there comparison still? Um,
When
so
you say no respect, what are you referring to? Respect that you didn't have for others, or that you were not receiving,
like
or?
both, right? You would feel like you are a victim or you're the
I see.
outsider
Okay,
looking
gotcha,
in.
gotcha,
You're
gotcha.
you're 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 misplaced,
Kind of just
right?
growing distant over the years from that. I don't want to say enlightened state, but that's that spiritual plane of that you
Yeah,
were that you touched, that you kind of, right, you
yeah.
had, yeah.
So that was the miracle that happened then, right? And then so it's almost like you're free falling from there, right?
Hmm.
and there doesn't seem to be any bottom that you would just kind of even bounce off of, right? And sure, you're gaining all the materialistic things, so all the timely things. So it's the opposite now, right? There's a little bit of falseness now. There's no sat. There's the other part of it, right? There's the opposite now, right? There's falsehood with me, right? I'm showing off. I'm pretending, pretending. Let's just say, to be at peace, right? Pretending, right? Still going to temple, doing service, and all that, but not. It's just outwardly, right?
Mm.
Inwardly, it's not there, right? The respect isn't there for people, let's say, who works hard, but you still come up with it. Yeah, they're probably this, or write them off, you know, not recognizing, people for their hard work. And then everything is just temporary, right? You're attaching yourself to temporary things. The permanence has gone away. It's all about, you know, uh, everything is just about temporary. We'll just do a vacation and look forward to that, or do this and build this. um, but it's like restlessness too, along with it, right? You're hopping from one to the other and not really content anymore. So that's when I was driving and I was at a red light, and I did I think an honest prayer inside of me came out, like, what is all this, right? Why are we going through the motions? I was feeling like that, young kid again, who just didn't feel like there was a misplaced
How much time are
person.
we talking about between the first
So
miracle
16 to
number?
35,
Six. That's
16
what I
to
was thinking.
35,
Okay, so
about a couple of
basically,
decades,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay.
A couple of decades passed by, and now I'm back. Moved to Canada for 10 years, and I live here, get married along the way, have kids, family and everything. Um, and then, have your nieces and your nephews and everybody around you just kind of grow up, and you have your friends and whatnot. And now you're back here, and you're like, what's the point of all this again? So that feeling of being, comes back again, which was kind of set the tone back when I was 16. And I did an honest prayer, at that time, while at the red light. You know what? If this is all to it, then I've just got duties that I need to perform at this point. Things are just going to be temporary. And, what's the point? Right. And then I got introduced to a few people, um, who were on a spiritual path. And one of those people had called me, and, this Italian guy, he calls me, and, and we talk on the phone for about an hour or so. And we talk, and the things that I was surrounded by when I had that enlightenment, and when I was 16, started to come back. That old feeling, the way he talked. He's a, this guy is a master in Taekwondo, and he's got his own place, and and he's teaching, and he seems to be living life content, and he matched some of his experiences that I had gone through as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it made me wonder, it made me think that something is possible. And he himself said when he was 35, he had this awakening. So I saw some parallels. And then I realized that the prayer that I had made, somehow the universe conspired together and brought this person in front of me. I just felt so strongly that I had asked for something. And if I asked for something, how would the universe respond? Right? How would God respond? Or how would a higher power, if there was something that was around me, how would it respond? It said it probably send another person to help me out. or
Yeah, it would
and
be
I just,
through another it would be through a human.
yeah. So I'm like, yes, this is it. Made no bones about it. And I had a chat, and I still talk to that guy, or about, it's been
How soon?
uh,
What was the time period in between the red light moment of the prayer and you having that real connection with him on the phone?
um, a horrible weekend. And I guess it was like everything had that could possibly go wrong would go
Mm.
wrong, right?
Hmm.
And when people are up around you are upset at you, you're not, nobody's happy with you, and I'm not happy with me. And you're just kind of at a point where you kind of have a very low spot in your life at a very
Yeah.
bottom. And, so it was kind of like, okay, go have that bottom. And then you'll be kind of like open-minded, you know.
Mm,
My heart is broken because I'm expecting people to behave and do things in a certain way, and it's not happening, right? As well, and I'm not doing the same for others that are around me as well. And my work that I've been, pays pretty well. I'm not looking forward to Monday mornings anymore, and everything is just,
mm,
is very off. So that weekend happens, and that weekend, I start to kind of see, I got to do something new, and I start to go on the internet and search for something, and that people who are feeling this way, what they feel, and there's a hotline or a helpline number that I pick up, and I call a hotline, and I got say, hey, meet at this certain place. There's a bunch of people who are feeling this way are meeting here. Said, you know what? I guess that's when I really asked for help, and that I said I'm not alone anymore, and I want to see, well, open to the possibility that maybe something could work. And I end up meeting this person there who who just came to me up to me at the end, and he talked a little bit. We chatted and we exchanged phone numbers and we followed up, and from there onwards, I guess maybe another 2 months later, um, I had that same experience again when I was at 16. That, hey, now you're back to where you were back at 16. And I went to the priest at the temple, and I explained to him exactly what he was.
can you clarify again? And when you say back at 16, it's that place of contentment or the place of I recognize I am conscious, I am this timeless. My true essence is that timeless thing that we
Yes,
all have.
yeah.
And
So
I've
that's
been out of touch with it for, sorry, cut you off, but
yeah,
I've been out of touch with it for more than almost 15 years now. And now I'm back, I've come back home to that
yeah,
timeless place.
exactly. So I was like a wanderer, was kind of left home in the morning, wandered a lot of places, but now he's come back, returned back home again. So it was a homecoming feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went up to the priest, and at the temple around 6 o'clock in the morning, and there were some services there. I started to go in the morning every, daily at 6 o'clock. And after that, when everybody would leave, I had this 45 minutes with the priest, you know, where we would just kind of
What do
talk.
you guys call him, by the way? What's like the name?
He would be called Gyani. A word comes from the word Gyani ji, like with respect. So Gyani comes from the word Gyan. Gyan is knowledge.
Uh,
So, and the
Gotcha.
one who has knowledge, right, would be a Gyani.
And but up until this point, I mean, you mentioned that you were still active in the community and like you're still
Right.
going to, I'm assuming still praying, still doing, the customary
Exactly. Yeah.
rituals, right? But
Right.
it
So it's
wasn't, it
just
wasn't
ritual.
like, yeah.
Right. It wasn't ritual. There was still belief in there, but I wasn't putting that belief or that faith into
Hmm.
action. I wasn't
Yeah, yeah.
applying that.
Right, right, right,
It
right.
was all book knowledge. You know a lot, but when
Yeah.
it comes to applying it, the application was missing. Right.
It wasn't touching
So
your heart.
yeah, but there wasn't this desire to go ahead and take that and put it into action
Yeah,
or
yeah,
share it with others. Right. That passion or enthusiasm was missing. Right. Um, so to make it active and alive was missing. So
yeah.
they were all philosophy, but it wasn't, a design for living at that point. It was all talk. It was all, it's a music to my ears, but there was no dancing to it, right?
Hmm.
It all sounded good. It all made sense, with that knowledge. But that making sense of knowledge and actually experiencing it and sharing it with others that wasn't there, you know.
And would you say that what happened at 16 and what happened again at 35, arriving home or being home, and then the homecoming again, is it more of a, because you probably always knew what that was, but it's a feeling that you cannot fake, or is it a thought?
Right. So that's the sut part, right? That's the truth. So I knew I was like honest with myself at that point.
But which
And
one is it though? Is it a thought? Is it like a logical, like a conclusion you come to, or is it like a
it's a merging, it's a union of
okay,
thought, and it's psychosomatic, right? It's the thinking and the
okay,
feeling.
okay, gotcha. Yeah,
And then there's a trade-off back and forth,
because I
you
can
know.
read about it all day in a book, but that doesn't mean that I actually feel what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
It's feeling, and then it's exuding out into the environment as well and coming back, right?
This
So,
reminds me of well, get to this, mention it later, but there's a part of your brain supposedly that helps separate you from others in the world. And with meditation or certain types of meditation, that's less active in the brain. So there's less
mhm.
of a barrier between your sense of self and others.
Yeah, I think something happened that probably perhaps over time, when I started to practice meditation, it changes my brain physiology as well. I'm certain of it. My neuropaths, were aligned now in a certain way that made me feel and believe and experience and put the thought process along that plane again. So everything was the merging of everything that was separated back into one again. So from
So
one became many, and many now were home again. Everything was home again.
you're talking to the um I forgot what the name of it, but the priest, the
The
guy,
priest, the Gyaniji,
the
yeah.
Ganaji, yeah. And so and then what happened?
So I spoke to him, and he kind of encouraged to continue what I was doing. And I said, well, what is the Sikh prescribed way of when we are at, so sure, I am here, but I want to pick up a path that I can walk along that is already walked on. I'm sure I'm not the first one here. That's what I found out after talking to that person and a bunch of people that I spoke with. And he said, continue that, right? Um, and that's when I realized the difference between religion and spirituality. Because what the priest was talking about not was of religion. He wanted me to explore my own spirituality.
Hmm.
Um, and he also gave me, a path that I can walk on, but I can make that path a little wider even for myself. Um, so it was aligned with what was happening.
I've said in another one of these episodes on this podcast about one of my journey, and I don't want to drift away too much, but I think it's relevant. That spirituality for me, I found was what it lacks sometimes is that structure and discipline and routine that that religion can provide, but they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that kind of what you were experiencing too?
Yeah.
That
So
I could apply this, but also stick with what I know, and it doesn't have to be the separate thing. It could just be an addition to.
so it was a homecoming. So I wanted to explore what was in the home, right? So think of it as an exploration
Hmm.
of what's there. Um, and if everything is at home, why am I looking out, right? So I wanted to see what was in my home already that I missed,
Hmm.
right? That's like me being living in the basement all my life and realize now I have a home, and I go in the home and I'm like, let me look around. What else is here, right? What have I got? What haven't seen, right? Who else is living here? What's going on? And I've been just going in and out of the basement all my life, right? Wow, there's windows, there's sunlight, there's so many other things, there are people, and who have been trying to get me out of the basement and let me get to know them. So let me figure that piece out, and just to kind of experience what is already here, right, rather than I go venturing out again. So it was
You can
more
make
again,
yourself comfortable here.
yeah, yeah. And I it's like you stop running whatever I was running after. I stopped running after that, and I stopped and I saw what was running towards me. That I was kind of running away from, but that was not my intention, if that makes sense. Right? Seemingly, I was running after things, and when I stopped running, I saw everything that was running towards me as well. It's your kids, your family, your friends, your job, your work, and every your community and everything that's here that was trying to get my attention, to get me involved and be part of. Like, yes, you know, um,
Mm.
this is this is me, and I started to pay more attention to my thoughts and my feelings and where they come from. So it wasn't just who you're living with, but also under this roof too, under our internal roof, what is happening, our internal makeup. So I started to kind of take inventory of each place that my thoughts, were materializing, and what was happening before on the outside and how the internal was reacting. And it just started to kind of take each one of them and start to file them and organize them a little bit. So a little bit of organization, and that helped me learn me. So I guess it was a chance to meet myself, right? That was the point of a setting was there, a place, a meeting was set, and I got to meet me. I met many other people, but this was the bowing down to me, to the authentic me, to the real me. And that was, the beautiful moment. And it continues to happen. That happened, I realized before when I was 16. Now, about 20 years later, it happened again. And when I say don't quit 5 minutes after the miracle, I realized that I had something, a base was set, and I went this whole circle, come back to where I started again, where I was, and I'm at that place again. And that wanted to maintain and keep that feeling, wanted to maintain and keep that thought process, that perception, um, that um, that way of being and of existing and living. It offered me a design
Can
where I can. Mhm.
can you talk about what that is, what that's like? What is that? What does it look like? What does it feel like to be in that state of in that place? What is it
Um,
actually?
mhm.
Yeah, I mean, how does it? So you mentioned a couple things that being more aware of the things that are coming at you, like the family members and life stuff that you're probably were missing a little bit before. So just being
Right,
more present of what's happening around you, also being more present what's happening within yourself,
right.
but
So emotionally
operate.
available, I would say, yes. So becoming more emotionally available to myself and others, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Um, but that was the all of it. That was just the beginning of it, right? Um, I guess there's the path of developing and understanding what my motives were and where those motives were coming from. So my actions were coming from my motives. My motives were coming from my character. And I was learning a little bit about my character more, not personality, which is a little bit different, right? So this character that, when you watch a movie, right? If you watch The Incredible Hulk or something like that, you think that this movie's gonna be, wow, 3 hour movie plus, right? It's gonna be full of action, and there's no action in the first 2 hours because there's a lot of character development, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this was the time for that character development, right? Where you take the iron in a way and put it in the furnace in the fire, and now you're able to mold it and bend it in any shape and form,
That's the
right?
best
So
part of the movie.
yeah.
That's actually what makes some of the Marvel movie, all movies, really good. Is that character development that and so you're starting to kind of now, are you becoming aware of your character and fine tuning it, or is it more just becoming aware of it and it is what it is?
Well, remember I said there's a lot of indecision, right? When you live life by accident, you don't decide to participate in it once something gets decided for you. So now the choice is back, right? I get to choose the reality I want to live in, right? Not the perception, but the reality. choose any perception, right? But here's the reality. So we get to choose the reality we want to live in. How do I want to
Mm.
take a certain event that happened? Do I want to take it in negatively, positively? How?
This goes back to the meditation with the paths, right? And we talked about before being conscious, and when you're conscious, then you are able to make a conscious choice about what you want to
Yeah.
do, as opposed to being thinking you're making a choice, but you're not really actually.
All right. So
Yeah.
remember
And
before
let me
take
know
the
about
wind, let the
time,
wind
by the
take.
way, if you're okay with time.
Yeah, I
We
think maybe another 10 minutes.
yeah, yeah, okay, good.
That's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so being conscious, before you talked about going with the flow, right? Well, wasn't going, but now I started to choose to go with the flow. Then I started to flow with the go,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right. So whether you flow with the go, go with the flow, right? Then you're becoming the flow, be the flow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's this journey, right, that you start to go and participate in, and you're not a human doing, you're a human being, and now you're being, but consciously being with choice, consciously existing, owning up to um, whatever may come on a daily basis, not letting things go stale or go by, and actively participating and becoming less fearful, more fearless, not becoming less careless and more carefree. Um, and and really live, I guess, to the full potential, and even beyond what I think that potential may be. Sharing with everybody, this particular experience, um, and participate. Um, and incredible things have come to pass, and are happening as a result of that. And it doesn't mean material success. No, it's this, the advancement of the internal spirituality, right? Internal growth. Come to, with that spiritual awakening or that enlightenment, the second coming of it. It's almost like that whatever I was not able to feel and do on my own before, now those things seem like, so easy uh, to be able to transcend them. Um, and, where you see, oh, the grass is greener on that side. Now you see, oh, because I'm doing all these things, the grass is greener on my side. But then realizing the reality, no, the grass is greener where you water it. Um, so just um, out of the box thinking, you could say, before I used to, because everybody said, hey, I think, therefore I am. Then start to pivot. Like, I am, therefore I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Head of the department of the head, you start to pivot things, right? Um, and you start to see things from another light, live in another dimension. You add another dimension, another to your being, right? Not just the physical senses, not just the emotional, not just the mental, this other sixth sense, maybe, or intuition. Um, live on the plane of inspiration a little bit, uh, of positivity. Yeah, it's been great. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, it does. It does. Uh, can I close this and open it back up, and we'll just do a couple more minutes and we'll wrap
Yeah,
up? Thank you so much for talking. It's like amazing. A couple questions. Um, when you talk about living with this in you can't even describe it. I don't know what the words are, but with this in this other dimension, in this higher plane of, I don't want to say higher like in a judgmental way, but in a more conscious state, you can say.
yeah,
Um, you mentioned the word Raja earlier, and you said that it means contentment. So it's not, the word is not supposed to really mean like Can you explain that? And does that, my understanding was that it's a person who's content or at peace. And is
So
that what,
Raja, yeah, Raja's the king, right? But king of what, right? Um, and do you still, if you're content, pretty much you can expand or contract. You can pretty much do anything. You're free, right? Um, but for whatever reason, you think a king always wants to expand, right? I don't know where I picked up that mentality, but it was
yeah,
more when I realized that, Raja is somebody who's content, who has enough treasure and is giving. Um, you know, I only know of one Maharaja that we, grew up with, and that was Maharaja Ranjit Singh. And in his kingdom was, went from New Delhi to Afghanistan all the way, all of Punjab, and in that, he was pretty content. He always gave, he, you know, uh, he always didn't get divided. He always was the uniter. Um, so at whatever point I can return back to that you know what, that's a glorious, um, I guess, institution, that was there. Out of all the Rajas, why is that Raja get talked about quite a lot? Because he was kind, he always gave, and he fought, and he was the uniter. Um, but there's those certain qualities, right? You'd come home after a war, and there are stories of him, you know, witnesses of him, holding himself from his beard and slapping himself because he thought he won the war because he wanted his ego to go down. You know, it wasn't him who won. It was, he was in touch with somehow a power. He was conscious of a power greater than himself that enabled him to do all those things. So every time he would, um, he would find ways to lower his
keep
ego.
himself in check?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, not to get too ahead of himself. Um, is the state, and so living consciously, is there more contentment? Is there more, uh,
Contentment is just one station along the way,
I see.
right? Patience is a station along the way, right? Acceptance, serenity, tranquility, right? Um, Protest, right? Uh, to be able to stand up for yourself and others in a defensive manner is okay. There are many things that come along the way which we don't have to justify ourselves for anymore, but rather through intuition, um, you're able to. Um,
Mm.
there's so many states within ourselves and those of others, to be not just compassionate or feel sympathy or empathy for somebody, but to feel equanimity. Um, you know, to be able to spend money on something not for your kids, for somebody else's kids too, right? And be okay with it. Um, so yeah, there are many things that come along the way.
Are there
Um,
any downsides to it?
um, I don't know. Downside would then become part of the temporary again, right? You have your ups. I would say upsides are also temporary, and downsides are too. So there's no up or down,
I see.
left or right. More of a question: is this worth it or not? Is it worth it? Is it worthwhile? Is it going to be worthwhile? So the question changes, right? Questions start to come across. Hey, should I be eating meat or not? Killing animals is it good or not? You know, um, well, what about living things? What about bees? What about insects, pesticide, plants? They have life, right? And you know, it's you start to exist on a different plane, which uh, I guess can
But
go either way in any direction, if that makes sense.
yeah.
But it's a fool who argues about these things. So
Mm.
arguing about him is not worthwhile.
Hmm. And that's just going back to the old way of being, of this very black and white thinking. But you're saying that there's, I guess, it's not that there's more answers, but more questions about
Yes.
things.
Well, uh, yes. So how can I phrase this? My questions don't get answered, but my answers get questioned.
Wait, hold on. My answers get questioned. Okay.
You have questions about things. My
Yeah.
questions don't get answered, but the current answers that I'm giving, they get questioned by participating in this way of living. So, which is about personal growth. The answers that I've given myself, they get questioned more, you know.
All right. Last question, and then we'll wrap up. Do you feel that you had to go through all of that time from 16 to 35 in order for it to really stick or for it to have an impact that it did?
That's a
Because
very good question. Yeah. Um, I'll answer this one in a different way, which I'm surprising myself right now. If I were to go through it again, would I? Right?
yeah,
Probably not the part which I would want to cause harm to others.
sure.
Right? Maybe that's and this answer would get questioned, which I'm
Hmm.
okay with. Um, if I were not to maybe create harms to others, um, then yes. But if
Yeah.
I've created harm for others, some people would say, hey, that's their karma. It's coming back to them. Funny thing about karma is we don't know whether something came back to them or whether it's the first time it's done. We don't know that.
Hmm. Right.
Right. Um, so, so yeah, if I were to do it all over again without causing harm to others, I think that's probably um, the path I would choose. But I would certainly accept the challenges that were presented in my way um, to experience what I need to go through. Um, you know, I those challenges, those obstacles were not there to cross for me to get here, but those obstacles were the path. Right. So the obstacles are not in the path, they are the path. And I accept that path because now there's a map I have as well.
Beautiful. All right. All right. I don't want to take too much of your time. Thank you so much for doing this
Yeah,
and
you're welcome.
just
Thank you.
just sharing your journey. And it really means a lot to me. It's and I know that you like talking about this stuff too. So I think we share that in common. And yeah, yeah. I was going to say something, but I forgot. Oh yeah, can you tell me again how to do the thing, and then we'll close with that? The greeting. Do you say it also when you go as a goodbye?
Yes, say Sat Sri Akal.
Sat, uh,
Sri,
spell Sri.
SRI.
Okay, so I'm gonna write this down. So Sat is SATSRI and then AKAL.
You got it. Yeah. Sat
Sat
Sri Akal.
Sri Akal.
Sat Sri Akal. Yeah,
Truth, respect, and timelessness.
that's right.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you so much.